forget those memory championships they show on TV, you know? Today we're going way back, like old school.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We're talking Arabian Desert old school. We're diving into how people centuries ago developed these incredible memory skills long before smartphones were a thing.
Fascinating. You know, before we had Google to remind us of, well, everything.
Exactly. And to help us decode this, we're looking at this YouTube video. Ustaz Oni Muhammad Sungai, Misteri di Tengah, Padang, Pasir. It's uploaded by Al-Kafi Production.
And what's so striking, from my perspective at least, is how these memory techniques were woven into their everyday lives. Not some kind of, party trick. It was their lifeblood.
It's like their environment demanded it, right?
Right.
And the video really digs into this whole idea of the power of naming, how crucial names and lineages were in this culture.
Right, absolutely.
And not just for people either, for animals too. Imagine knowing your camel's family tree like it was your own.
It sounds wild to us, I know, but in a tribal society where oral history was everything, those names, they were like their memory palace.
Their mental map.
Exactly. Think about it, navigating complex social structures, trade, even just surviving. That detailed knowledge was their Google.
It's like they hardwired this information into their world. But it does make you wonder how much of this recall was for practical daily use versus, say, cultural storytelling, keeping history alive.
Probably a bit of both, to be honest. The source highlights how they'd memorize poems, prose, family histories, even animal pedigrees. It points to a time when the spoken word had immense power. For entertainment, sure, but also for preserving their cultural heritage.
It's funny, you mentioned animal pedigrees. I can barely remember my neighbor's dog's name, let alone trace its lineage back generations.
Think of it this way. In their world, knowing a camel's lineage, for example, it could mean the difference between a fair trade and being totally swindled.
It's like instant background info.
Exactly. Like having access to this whole database that immediately boosts your social standing, safeguards your economic security. That's some serious motivation to keep those memory skills sharp, wouldn't you say?
Something else that really struck me in the video was the term jahiliyyah. They use it to describe pre-Islamic Arabia, which is often translated as, like, the age of ignorance. But the video seems to be painting a slightly different picture, wouldn't you say?
Right. That translation, it can be a bit misleading. Yeah, this period, before Islam became widespread, it definitely didn't have the same legal and social structures we see today.
Things were a little looser back then.
To say the least.
Yeah.
But ignorance in this context, it doesn't necessarily mean a lack of, intelligence or knowledge itself. It's more about, think of it as a different way of knowing, was shaped by the desert, by their unique environment.
Not ignorance, but a different kind of knowledge base, adapted for their world.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And, the video even points out how incredibly skilled they were in navigating that vast, unforgiving desert, using the stars, wind patterns, even subtle changes in the landscape.
Stuff you can't learn from a textbook.
Exactly. This was generational wisdom, passed down through stories, through observation, pure experience.
Now, that's what I call essential knowledge. And speaking of stories, the video tells this fascinating one about a man named Alak, gets lost in the desert, right? And he stumbles upon this hidden river.
Sounds refreshing.
Right. But here's the catch. When he tries to return to the river, it's gone. Completely vanished. The only thing left behind is his water pouch, or kurba, that he'd left to mark the spot.
Wow. Talk about a disappearing act. It's like something out of a dream, isn't it?
Mm.
This story, it's a powerful reminder of how harsh the desert could be. That line between survival and, well, not surviving, it was very, very thin.
Definitely keeps you on your toes. Do you think it was a mirage, or maybe some kind of metaphor, or both?
That's the beauty of oral storytelling traditions.
Yeah.
They don't always spell things out for you. They let you, the listener, engage with the story on different levels.
Find your own meaning.
Exactly. On a practical level, it highlights how dangerous desert travel really was. But it could also be a metaphor for the fleeting nature of hope, or even the challenge of holding on to anything, physically or emotionally, in such a demanding environment. It makes you think.
For sure. Now, the video connects the story of Alak to a later event involving 8 envoys sent by the Prophet Muhammad.
An interesting connection.
I have to admit, though, the link felt a little, well, unclear to me.
It's subtle, for sure. But remember, we're dealing with a different style of storytelling here. In oral histories, meaning isn't always explicitly stated. It relies on a kind of shared understanding, on the listener's ability to connect the dots.
So how do you interpret that connection, then, between Alak and these envoys?
Well, think about the common thread. Both Alak and the envoys, they ventured into the unknown. facing unpredictable situations, risking everything.
Both journeys into the unknown.
Right. And the story of Alek, lost and alone in the desert. It could almost be seen as a kind of foreshadowing of the dangers that awaited these envoys on their mission, the risks they faced.
Wow. That adds a whole other layer to the story, doesn't it? Now, for those who might not know the full backstory here, could you give us some context on these envoys and their mission?
Sure. So these envoys, they were on a diplomatic mission sent by the Prophet Muhammad to spread the message of Islam. This was a very pivotal time in early Islamic history, but also a pretty dangerous one. Out of the 8 envoys sent out, only 7 returned. The 8th, a man named Harris, was killed.
A stark reminder of the risks.
Definitely. And this event's actually linked to the Battle of Mu'tah, a major conflict for that early Muslim community.
It really makes you think about the weight of history, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And how even a story about a single person can connect us to those larger events.
Absolutely.
But, the video doesn't end with the fate of those envoys.
You're right. It circles back to something we were talking about earlier, actually, this whole idea of sharing knowledge.
Right, because what good is knowledge if you keep it to yourself? It's like that saying, knowledge is power, but only if you share it, right?
Exactly. And the video makes it even more specific. It says, even if it's just one verse of truth, it's a powerful message, really. We all have knowledge to share. Insights from our own lives, our own experiences, that could make a difference to someone else.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in thinking, oh, what I know isn't that important. Especially these days, right? I mean, we're drowning in information.
Exactly. And that's why I think that message from the video is more relevant today than ever. In the past, knowledge, it was almost like this guarded thing, right? Passed down carefully, selectively. But now, we're practically drowning in it.
Drinking from a fire hose.
Right. The challenge isn't finding information, it's figuring out what's actually valuable. Holding on to those nuggets of truth, and then crucially, sharing them with the world.
We've gone from a scarcity of knowledge to like an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Right. And so the art of storytelling, of sharing knowledge in a way that's engaging, that actually means something, that's more important now than ever. It's not enough to just have information. You have to be able to share it in a way that connects, that sparks something in someone else.
It's about passing the torch.
Exactly.
Wow, what a journey this deep dive has been. We started in the Arabian desert talking about these amazing memory techniques, and somehow we've ended up, reflecting on the very nature of knowledge itself.
It's all connected, isn't it? History, culture, even something as seemingly specific as how we remember things.
It makes you wonder what other hidden connections are out there just waiting to be discovered if we know where to look. Until next time, keep those minds curious, friends.